Hi, my name is Tara, and I want to welcome you to the View from Israel podcast. The View from Israel was born on the Black Sabbath of October 7, 2023, from the need to present valid and confirmed information to the public. Our social media hashtag is View from Israel. Our podcast is available in all major podcast directories. Our free newsletter is on Substack and comes out approximately 5 times a week. We are not associated with any political movement or outside institution or company. Our entire budget comes from advertisements in our podcasts and newsletters, videos, memberships, and donations. At The View from Israel, we believe silence is no longer an option. We are guided by one primary principle. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Now, let us go to our podcast episode.
The title for this episode is October 7th, 2023. The Day Israel Changed. Timeline of the Black Sabbath. Besides this brief introduction, much of what is in this episode comes from various sources. All links to these sources will be in the description portion of the episode. We all be reading different sections in this episode. Tara, and Sheila, and myself. This is not an op-ed, nor an opinion piece. There is so much misinformation one person can take from Substack, X, and all the other social networks. I have been cautious with the sources used here, so that no one can say the source is biased. There are many other sources I could have used if I wanted to. I would hope the story speaks for itself. Before we begin with exactly what happened on October 7th, 2023, we need to lay out some background for that specific day. In preparing the Bearing Witness, Profiles in Courage and Horror series, I needed to remind myself of the times and dates of the events. To my surprise, there is still a sore lack of detailed sources on this subject. I assume it is being compiled by government and private institutions and will be released in the coming years. However, as I researched the subject more deeply, I found myself saying, I lived through that? That? No way! So, in this episode, I will combine sources of events, accompanied by the documents, and source notations. These will all be listed in the episode description. It is not meant to be a complete list. We are compiling a detailed timeline for the View from Israel website, and when at least part of it is done, in a timeline format, we will post it there. First, we must set the stage for our timeline to understand the mindset. October 7th was a Sabbath and a holiday combined. Now, I grant you, a majority of Israelis do not adhere to Sabbath laws, nor are they in any way religious. However, many are what we call traditional. So when it is a Sabbath, coupled with a holiday, many take trips, visit friends, and the like. I mention this because, as you will see, in Zekim and Sderot, these were some of the civilians massacred. The holiday in question is Simchat Torah. In synagogues, a different portion of the Torah, the Old Testament Bible, is read weekly. The best way to describe these portions is to consider them long chapters. The last chapter is always read on Simchat Torah, followed immediately by the beginning of the Torah. In this way, the holiday commemorates the continuous flow of the Torah. By the way, it is one of those holidays, centered around children, like the Passover Seder. Jewish holidays are determined by the Hebrew calendar, which is different than the Gregorian calendar, so based on English dates, our holidays fall out on different dates every year, but they are always within a similar range. For instance, Hanukkah and Christmas usually align somewhat, which is a boon to all the stores and online sellers. Easter and Passover as well. So there you have it. Sabbath and Simchat Torah together fell on the same day in 2023. By October 8th, this day was called the Black Sabbath. But let us add one other point here, to set the stage, as it were. In the English calendar, October 6th was the 50th anniversary of the outbreak of the Yom Kippur War. The most traumatic war that Israel had ever fought, because it was fighting for its very existence from a surprise attack. That is until October 7th, 2023, precisely 50 years after the beginning of the Yom Kippur War.
So the main question is, what happened on Black Sabbath and when did it happen? We will start with the timeline presented in Wikipedia. However, we added other sources as well. They are all in the episode notations. Please take note that most of Wikipedia numbers are not correct or not updated. I have also resisted the urge to replace the term militants used in Wikipedia with terrorists. However, the time structure is basically correct, though it also needs more exact information. At 6:29 a.m., air raid sirens were activated in southern and central Israel in response to Hamas missiles. Concurrently, Mohammed Deif, the leader of the Hamas military wing, announced in a 10-minute recorded message published online at the start of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, and that the enemy will understand that the time of their rampaging without accountability has ended, urging Palestinians to attack Israeli settlements with whatever weapons they had. Deif said the attack was in response to the 16-year blockade of Gaza, Israeli incursions in West Bank cities, violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Israeli settler violence. Shortly thereafter, Hamas Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh made a similar announcement in a televised address. At 7 a.m., the Supernova Music Festival near the Re'em kibbutz was attacked by Hamas militants, some of whom arrived via motorized paragliders. Of the approximately 3,000 to 5,000 people at the festival, at least 260 were killed and many others abducted. At 7:40 a.m., the Israel Defense Forces (IDF) confirmed that Hamas militants had entered southern Israel and asked residents of Sderot and other cities to remain indoors. 1,400 were killed in the Hamas attack, while over 250 others were kidnapped. The number of kidnapped is 250 plus. The exact number is unknown as no lists have ever been provided. As of January 9, 2024, the totals are as follows: 1,393 total killed, 879 civilians, 59 police, 514 soldiers, 13 emergency services. As of January 9, 2024, the number of hostages returned to Israel is 121. 37 hostages were killed. 136 remain hostage. At 8:15 a.m., sirens were activated in Jerusalem, following a rocket barrage that landed in the forested hills on the city's western edge. At 8:23 a.m., Israel declared a state of alert for war, activating its reservists in response to continued rocket attacks. At 8:34 a.m., Israel announced that it had begun counteroffensive operations against Hamas. At 10:47 a.m., the Israeli Air Force (IF) began attacking Gaza. At 11:35 a.m., Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made his first statement about the conflict via Twitter, declaring that Israel is at war. At 12:21, the IDF began operations to relieve cities in southern Israel as the number of rockets launched from Gaza increased to over 1,200. At 12:29, the United States made its first statement through the National Security Council, which condemned the terrorist attack and reaffirmed United States support for Israel. At 16:08, which is 4:08 p.m., President Joe Biden spoke with Netanyahu and expressed his condolences and support, later declaring during a speech that United States support for Israel was solid and unwavering. At 1800 hours, which is 6 p.m., the Israeli Security Cabinet said that a state of war had officially begun at this time. It was later discovered that the October 7th rocket attacks included a strike on an Israeli nuclear missile site. Now we must list the ongoing attacks on the Black Sabbath. Here we start with the rocket attacks. The following is mainly from Britannica Online. Starting at 6:29 a.m., simultaneous attacks took place on many towns, kibbutzim, and cities in the south. These included massive rocket attacks. The assault began about 6:30 a.m., with a barrage of at least 2,200 rockets launched into Israel in just 20 minutes. During that opening salvo, Hamas used more than half the total number of rockets launched from Gaza during all of the 11-day conflict in 2021. The barrage reportedly overwhelmed the Iron Dome system, the highly successful anti-missile defense system deployed throughout Israel, although the IDF did not specify how many missiles penetrated the system. As the rockets rained down on Israel, at least 1,500 militants from Hamas infiltrated Israel at dozens of points by using explosives and bulldozers to breach the border, which was heavily fortified with smart technology, fencing, and concrete. They disabled communication networks for several of the Israeli military posts nearby, allowing them to attack those installations and enter civilian neighborhoods undetected. Militants simultaneously breached the maritime border by motorboat near the coastal town of Zikim. Others crossed into Israel on motorized paragliders. But what exactly happened? Who was attacked? Again, back to the rocket attacks that were a precursor to what would come. The aftermath of the Hamas rocket hit on the maternity ward of Barzillai Medical Center, a hospital in southern Israel, during the Hamas-led attack on Israel. DIF said more than 5,000 rockets had been fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel in a span of 20 minutes at the start of the operation. Israeli sources reported the launch of 3,000 projectiles from Gaza, killing 5. Explosions were reported in areas surrounding Gaza and the Sharon Plain, including Gedera, Herzliya, Tel Aviv, and Ashkelon. Air raid sirens were activated in Beersheva, Jerusalem, Rehovot, Rishon LeZion, and Palmachim Air Base. Hamas issued a call to arms with DIF calling on Muslims everywhere to launch an attack. Palestinian militants also opened fire on Israeli boats off the Gaza Strip, while clashes broke out between Palestinians and the Israel Defense Forces in the eastern section of the Gaza perimeter fence. In the evening, Hamas launched another barrage of about 150 rockets toward Israel, with explosions reported in Yavne, Givatayim, Bat Yam, Beit Dagan, Tel Aviv, and Rishon LeZion. Simultaneously, around 3,000 to 4,000 Palestinian militants infiltrated Israel from Gaza using trucks, pickup trucks, motorcycles, bulldozers, speedboats, and powered paragliders. Images and videos showed heavily armed and masked militants, dressed in black fatigues, riding pickup trucks and opening fire in Sderot, killing dozens of Israeli civilians and soldiers and setting homes on fire. Other videos appeared, showing Israelis taken prisoner, a burning Israeli tank, and militants driving Israeli military vehicles. Israeli first responders reportedly recovered documents from killed militants' bodies, with instructions to attack civilians, including elementary schools and a youth center. The documents said to kill as many people as possible and to take hostages for use in future negotiations. Some of the militants wore body cameras to record the acts, presumably for propaganda purposes.
Now we must get to the attacks themselves. We will divide this up according to each community or area. Re'em Music Festival Massacre. As part of the Hamas-led attack, 364 civilians were killed, and many more wounded at the Supernova Sukkot gathering, an open-air music festival, celebrating the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, near Kibbutz Re'em. At least 40 hostages were also taken. This mass killing had the most significant number of casualties out of several massacres, targeting Israeli civilians in settlements adjacent to Gaza, that were part of the October 7th invasion, alongside those at the settlements of Netiv HaAsara, Be'eri, Kfar Aza, Nir Oz, and Halit. At 6:30 a.m., around sunrise, rockets were noticed in the sky. Around 7 a.m., a siren warned of an incoming rocket attack, prompting festival-goers to flee. Subsequently, approximately 50 Hamas gunmen, dressed in military attire and using motorcycles, trucks, and powered paragliders, surrounded the festival grounds and indiscriminately fired on people attempting to escape. Attendees seeking refuge nearby, in bomb shelters, bushes, and orchards, were killed while in hiding. Those who reached the road and parking lot were trapped in a traffic jam as militants fired at vehicles. The militants executed wounded people at point-blank range as they crouched on the ground. As festival attendees fled in panic, jeeps filled with gunmen, began firing at the escaping cars. Gunmen also blockaded roads. The open terrain left few places to hide. Many attendees who hid in the trees were murdered as militants methodically shot them. Others who hid in bushes and orchards managed to survive. Independently verified drone footage of the site showed dozens of scorched, burnt cars and skid marks. Footage of the attack, posted on a Telegram channel, included graphic depictions of murder and hostage-taking. During the massacre, according to survivor and emergency responder testimony, Hamas militants raped women attendees. According to survivor testimony, released by Lahav 433, a young woman was gang-raped by Hamas militants before being murdered. The testimony was published in Hebrew and English news outlets in Israel. According to Haaretz, police reporter Josh Briner, Zaka emergency response personnel found naked women with injuries and their genitals mutilated, with others found bound and naked below their waists. The details of the hostages' whereabouts and conditions are not publicly known. The massacre at the festival was the largest terror attack in Israel's history and the worst Israeli civilian massacre ever. Let us now move on to the Kfar Aza massacre. During the Hamas-led attack, around 70 Hamas militants attacked Kfar Aza, a kibbutz about 3 kilometers (1.9 miles) from the border with the Gaza Strip, massacring residents and abducting several hostages. The kibbutz had more than 700 residents, and it took the IDF 2 days to regain full control of it. While the exact number of Israelis killed is unknown, as of October 15, 52 were listed as dead, and another 20 or more were missing. The attack is notable for brutality, in the form of beheadings, dismemberment, and victims having been burned alive. Evidence provided by Israel's National Social Security Agency showed that of the 52 civilians that were killed in Kfar Aza, the youngest was 14 years old. Now we move on to the massacre at Kibbutz Be'eri. On the morning of October 7, 2023, at 6:30 a.m., Hamas militants began firing rockets at the kibbutz. Around 70 militants entered the kibbutz, on motorcycles and in vehicles. The 10-member security team from the kibbutz fought the attackers, but was overwhelmed, and at least 5 were killed. After capturing the village, the attackers started going from house to house, shooting or capturing the residents. They also shot at buildings and set some on fire. The militants were accompanied by a camera team and journalist who documented the attack and extolled it as a Palestinian victory. Many residents tried to hide in safe rooms, but the militants blew up the safe room doors and killed those inside. The militants took up to 50 people hostage in a dining room in Be'eri and kidnapped others, taking them to the Gaza Strip. Videos emerged, showing the hostages being led barefoot across a street in town. The hostages in the dining hall were freed when security forces stormed the dining hall, killing the militants there. At least 130 people were killed in the attack, including women, such as peace activist Vivian Silver, children, and infants, claiming the lives of 10% of the community's residents. Dozens of homes were also burned down. Several newspapers compared the brutality of the atrocities to that of ISIS. Hostages were taken, leading to a standoff with the IDF. One 10-month-old baby is confirmed to have been shot during the attack, while held in the arms of her mother. The battle at Moshav Yakini. A squad of Hamas militants that arrived in a van attacked the Moshav of Yakini. There were 7 casualties in the Moshav, including a border police officer. An IDF major in the Maglon unit was also injured. The community leaders were on holiday in Thailand then, and remotely directed the Moshav's 18-person protection team's response. Yamam and Soyeret Matkal IDF units, these are elite IDF units, eventually arrived and killed all the attackers. The battle at Kibbutz Ein Hashlosha. In the Kibbutz Ein Hashlosha, at least 4 civilians were killed while defending the kibbutz from militants, and multiple hostages were taken. An 80-year-old Argentinian woman died after her home was set on fire, and she was unable to escape. A standoff between the attackers and the residents' security team lasted 6 hours. The leader of the security team, who was in his 60s, was killed in the firefight. A 63-year-old grandmother was also among those killed in the attack. A 39-year-old Israeli-Chilean woman was shot 8 times. 30 survivors were discovered in the kibbutz 3 days after the massacre, 14 of whom were Thai nationals. The massacre at the smaller Siduk Music Festival. Siduk was a small trance music festival that took place in the open fields near Kibbutz Nir Oz, about 2 kilometers, or 1.2 miles, from the border of Gaza. The event drew around 100 participants. Hamas militants attacked the festival, killing 17 Israelis. Some were fatally shot at the festival site, while others were killed as they attempted to escape to nearby kibbutzim. Most survivors hid under small bushes until Israel Defense Forces rescued them a few hours later. The attack on the Re'im military base. At 10 a.m., less than 5 hours after the attacks began, fighting was reported at Re'im military base, headquarters of the Gaza division. It was later reported that Hamas took control of the base and took several Israeli soldiers captive, before the IDF regained control later in the day. The base was reportedly the location of IDF drone and surveillance operations. Hamas posted a video of dead Israeli soldiers it had killed at the base. The attack at Kibbutz Niram. Kibbutz Niram was attacked, but no residents were harmed. Inbal Rabin Lieberman, the 25-year-old security coordinator, alongside her uncle Ami, led a guard detail that killed multiple militants attempting to infiltrate a nearby chicken farm. They successfully deterred the rest of the invading militants from entering the community. The attacks and massacres at Zikim were in 3 different major areas. The attacks at Zikim are still shrouded in mystery. It is difficult to determine how many people were slaughtered by Hamas, how many soldiers were killed, and exactly what happened. We were tempted to place Israeli reports here about the attacks that have been confirmed, that place higher numbers on the killed. The first area of attack is the Zikim army bases. The Israeli Navy prevented most Hamas militants from landing on the beach, although an estimated 11 militants landed. Fighting occurred outside Zikim, at 3 military bases, and on the adjacent coastline. The garrison of the training base held out, but the other 2 bases were overrun. At the very least 15 soldiers were killed in these battles. The second area of attack is the Zikim Beach. Zikim Beach, the southernmost beach in the country, is considered very popular among residents of southern Israel. The IDF estimated that 11 Hamas militants managed to land on the beach. 2 or 3 were killed by naval gunfire shortly after landing, but the rest began killing civilians on the beach. 19 civilian beachgoers were killed. The deceased included fishermen, teenagers on a camping trip, and employees of a bar in Beersheba, who had held a party on the beach the previous night. The third area of attack was the Zikim kibbutz itself. The bulk of the remaining Hamas fighters were eventually killed while attempting to enter the kibbutz of Zikim. An emergency security team of civilians there had been alerted to the infiltration by the Navy and preemptively positioned themselves along a fence surrounding the kibbutz. A squad of 6 Hamas militants arrived at the kibbutz, driving the Israeli military vehicle that had been abandoned on the beach. A firefight quickly ensued, and the militants dispersed, eventually being tracked down and killed after about an hour of combat. The massacre at Moshav Nativ HaSara. 35 Hamas militants, some via paragliders, and most via car, attacked Nativ HaSara, close to the border fence. The militants killed at least 20 people, including, in some cases, members of the same family. Before the massacre, the moshav was home to approximately 900 residents. The Battle of Kibbutz Alumim. Kibbutz Alumim is close to the border fence with the Gaza Strip. There were 41 Thai and Nepalese foreigners working at the kibbutz. The militants killed between 16 and 17 of these workers and kidnapped between 5 and 8 of them. The militants did severe structural damage to the kibbutz dairy farming operation. After heavy fighting, the security team was able to push the militants back with the help of the Israeli Defense Forces. No deaths among the remaining civilian population of the kibbutz were reported. Militants killed at least 2 Israeli soldiers, while a significant number of Hamas militants were killed. The massacre and battle at Kibbutz Kisifim. At least 70 Hamas fighters entered the kibbutz and massacred at least 8 of its members, as well as 6 Thai workers. 4 kibbutz members were kidnapped, and the kibbutz buildings suffered heavy damage. The kibbutz security team fought back during the attack, and 4 of its members were killed, including its leader. IDF troops eventually arrived and cleared the kibbutz. The massacre at Kibbutz Holit. Residents of the kibbutz say the attack on Holit started at around 8 a.m. Hamas militants moved from house to house, killing at least 11 civilians and injuring many more. On October 11, 4 days after the attack, Hamas released a video alleging to show kibbutz member Avital Alajim was freed that very day by Hamas at Gaza's border, along with her neighbor's 2 small children. Alajim contradicted this claim and described how, on the day of the attack itself, the abductors left them unsupervised inside Gaza, and how she managed to walk back to Holit, taking the 2 children with her. The battles in the town of Sderot. The Israeli town of Sderot, located close to the border between Israel and the Gaza Strip, has frequently been the target of rocket attacks and incursions during the Gaza-Israel conflict. Hamas militants massacred at least 50 civilians and 20 police officers. On October 7, 2023, Hamas gunmen entered the town and engaged in firefights with local police units and civilians. Many civilians were murdered on the street and in homes in the surprise attack. Eventually, the attackers overpowered the garrison at the local police station and occupied it, killing approximately 30 people, including police officers and civilians. Following the arrival of IDF reinforcements, IDF troops surrounded the police station and regained control over it, killing at least 10 Hamas militants. Gunfire and bulldozers were used to demolish the Sderot police station and kill any gunmen remaining inside. On the morning of October 7, a tour minibus left from the west of the Negev towards the Dead Sea to conduct a trip for a group of retirees, some of them Holocaust survivors. The minibus picked up pensioners from Ofakim, Netivot, and then Sderot. Due to a flat tire, the minibus stopped at the entrance to Sderot to fix it. At this point, a siren sounded, and the minibus occupants got out of it and went towards the shelter, but the shelter door, which was a shelter with an automatic opening door, did not open. 2 vans loaded with Hamas terrorists that entered Sderot recognized the group, shot them all from point-blank range, murdered them, and made a dead check, again from point-blank range. The driver managed to escape, with another woman, who lay behind the guardrail. The terrorists recognized them and shot them. The woman was killed as a result of the shooting, and the driver, who was lying under her, pretended to be dead and was saved. All 15 passengers of the bus were murdered. By October 8, Israeli forces had regained control over Sderot. Late on October 8, the Sderot municipality released the names of the Israel Defense Forces Israel police, and fire personnel killed in the attack. Among those slain by Hamas gunmen was the commander of the Kiryat Gat fire station. After we now covered the major attacks, massacres, and battles, we need to know how many hostages were taken. This is not a simple task, as the International Red Cross has not done anything to get Israel a list. We do not know if someone is a hostage or was killed and never identified. Soon after the start of the Hamas operation, there were reports that many civilians and soldiers had been taken as captives back to the Gaza Strip. Later in the day, Hamas announced it had captured enough Israeli soldiers to force a prisoner swap, and Israel confirmed hostages had been taken. In Be'eri, up to 50 people were taken hostage. After an 18-hour standoff between militants and IDF forces, they were freed. Hostages were also reported taken in Ofakim, where policemen led by Chief Superintendent Yair Davidov engaged Palestinian militants in a shootout. Davidov and 3 of his men were killed, and the IDF later rescued 2 Israeli hostages in the suburb of Urim. There were reports of militants killing and stealing family pets. Hamas took many hostages back to Gaza. On October 16, they said they were holding 250 hostages and that they had done so to force Israel to release its Palestinian prisoners. And now, let us deal with the aftermath of the day of October 7th and sum up some figures. On October 7th, over 100 civilians were killed in the Be'eri massacre, including women and children, and over 270 people were killed at the music festival in Re'aim. As of October 10th, over 100 people had been reported killed in the Kfar Aza massacre, with the total death toll unknown. 9 people were fatally shot at a bus shelter in Sderot. At least 4 people were reported killed in Kusifi. At least 400 wounded were treated in Ashkelon, while 280 others were reported in Beer Sheva, 60 of whom were in serious condition. In the north, injuries from rocket attacks were reported in Tel Aviv. At least 49 Israeli children and adolescents under the age of 19 were killed in the attack. Those are the numbers, though even now, they keep on rising as we find more and more bodies. Now I would like to read to you a short quote from the Haaretz daily newspaper, from an article entitled, "The Day That Changed Israel." For the first few hours of October 7th, most Israelis were either running to find shelter or glued to their phones and television screens, trying to piece together a reality they never could have imagined. Between non-stop sirens and thousands of rockets being launched from Gaza, those living far from the Strip tried to make sense of the horrifying information slowly emerging on social and traditional media, as thousands of armed Palestinian terrorists stormed southern Israeli communities. Youngsters were trying to escape from a trance music festival. Families were locked in safe rooms, while their homes were being set afire. Roads looked like something from an apocalyptic movie. Frantic messages were sent to family members and friends. Videos of children, women, and men were seen being dragged into the unknown. More than 2 months after the unprecedented attack on Gaza border communities, Israel is still coming to terms with its inability to foresee and stop the worst assault on Jews since the Holocaust. It was a Black Saturday that has never really ended for many, but especially for the hostages and their families, the Israelis who have lost loved ones, and those fighting a brutal war with no end in sight. The following comes from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a highly respected Washington-based think tank and research group. And I quote, "Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th is the 3rd deadliest terrorist attack since data collection began in 1970, based on the number of fatalities, with the 9/11 attacks representing the worst mass fatality terrorist attack. Islamic State attacks are 3 of the top 9 deadliest attacks, with 2 attacks in the top 5. I think that is enough for one day. Don't you? Thank you for listening. Our podcast is available in all major podcast directories, on Substack, and on our website, viewfromisrael.com. You can listen to it in your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel. Please do not forget to share, like, comment, and subscribe in your favorite podcast app. Our newsletter is on Substack and comes out approximately 5 times a week. Use the links in our profile here, or go to substack.com and search for The View from Israel. It is totally free. There is no paywall. All one-time or continuing monthly donations are greatly appreciated. Links to our donation page are in Substack, in our newsletters, and in the podcast episode directories. If you wish to advertise with us in our podcast or our newsletter, please contact us at advertise@viewfromisrael.com. Please take note. We are not associated with any political movement or outside institution or company. Our entire budget comes from advertisements in our podcasts and videos, newsletters, memberships, and donations. At The View from Israel, we believe that silence is no longer an option. We are guided by one primary principle. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. I hope you have a wonderful day.